Okay, so good evening, Abhishek. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for joining. How are you doing today?
Doing very good, Arvind.
Okay, so let's get right to it. So, Abhishek, we are here to talk about centrism, and we're here to talk about the Indic form of centrism. So, I'm going to begin with a very obvious and the very first question. Why did you start this project? What's been your main motivation behind starting something of this sort?
No, we're all Indians and we don't know what is it to be an Indian. Nobody taught us, nobody asked anybody what is it to be an Indian. We think knowing the constitution, rights, duties, preamble, national anthem, Vande Mataram,
Hmm.
uh, our MP, MLA, parliamentary structure is being an Indian. And I would say about 90% of the people, in my opinion, don't even know that. So we're quite far behind. But knowing that itself is not alone being an Indian. I think being an Indian is a deeper question.
Hmm.
Even if you don't know the constitution, preamble, duties, rights, the
Hmm.
deeper question is who am I and what is it to be an Indian?
Hmm.
What is Indianness, in fact? What is Bhartiyata, right? Does it mean being an Indian citizen? Does it mean being in the geography of India? What is it to
Hmm.
be a child of this motherland? I think that was the question because I spent a lot of years being influenced by a lot of Western models.
Hmm.
And at some stage, I'm like, wow, I don't even know what it is to be an Indian, and I need to
Hmm.
rediscover what it is to be in my roots and all. So to me, Centerfield is a part of a larger attempt. Earlier, it was
Hmm.
called Rediscovery of India, in fact.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then basis what I discovered, I named it Centerfield, because that's what I discovered on my journey.
Hmm.
Really, the original journey is rediscovery of India, and it's a journey for each of us to take. Anybody who wants to discover what is India, what is it to be Indian?
So so the thing is, you've been on this journey for a while. I remember chatting with you a while ago. I think a couple of years ago, or maybe 2, 3 years ago, you mentioned that you wanted to start something called the rediscovery of India, and you had a very detailed plan in mind. But unfortunately, COVID then ended up playing spoil sport to all of that. But then we were quite lucky because then we've been able to take it online, and you've been doing a series of podcasts actually. You've been doing this on a regular basis with a lot of people. So what I wanted to understand from you was, who are these people that you reached out to? What has been your logic behind reaching out to a lot of these people from different walks of life? It's not just been academic people, it's also been people from the civil society, people from every walk of life. So can you share a little on that?
Yeah, I think before I share about the people, Arvind, I want to just show you the graphic that captured for me rediscovery of India,
Hmm.
right? And this is what I had started out with. Uh,
Yeah, I remember seeing this. Okay, yeah.
so let's
I
talk a
remember
bit
seeing this.
about this because this is an important thing, right? Uh, on the left is the rightist vision of India,
Hmm.
Bharat
Hmm.
Mata, standing on the Akhand Bharat with a saffron flag,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
inspiring, very proud, very, very powerful,
Hmm.
right? And on the right, do you know who's the artist on the right?
I am not able to figure that out. Sorry.
The right is MF Hussein's painting called Bharat Mata.
Really?
Yes, that's MF Hussain painting Bharat Mata. And if you see closely in that painting, I mean, you can interpret it many ways, but
Hmm.
can't miss Gandhiji, can't miss Buddha, can't
Yeah,
miss
yeah. Okay.
Ganesha, can't miss the
Hmm. Hmm.
Ashok Chakra, can't miss the oceans and mountains, hopefully. If you look
The
at it very
suns. There's
closely.
also a sun in the back, and those mountains in the
Yes.
back. I can see that. Yeah, yeah.
And Bharat Mata is dancing,
Yeah, yeah.
that's how I interpret that version of it. And it's a more liberal interpretation of what is it to be India, what is Indian,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
right? So those are the two left and right versions of India, right? And guess what's at the center?
It seems like a subtle form of India, where on one hand you have those Rudraksh beads, if I'm not wrong, at least on the right bottom, and then
Hmm.
on the top I can see the scriptures, those things on which you write.
Mhm.
So I can see that. Then I'm not able to figure out these other two things, but it seems like there's a illumination in the back, and this seems like a lady who's there, illuminated completely.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
I think I can see a
So,
halo in the back.
yeah. So this is Arvindranath Tagore, who's drawn Bharat Mata. And it's a very simple Bharat Mata.
Okay.
It's a Bharat Mata who's neither a very right-leaning Bharat Mata whose halo is on fire.
Hmm.
She's not so strong necessarily, or
Hmm.
fierce. Also not so playful or light as MF Hussein's version. Somewhere
Hmm.
she evokes for me the simplicity of India, the simplicity and the innocence almost of our culture,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And there's something about that middle which is very, very powerful for me, because it's non-fancy, it's very grounded. It
Hmm.
reminds
Hmm.
us that it reminds me that in spite of having so much abundance, we were very grounded. We were very,
Hmm.
very, anchored.
Hmm.
So this I think is the
Essence of.
essence of Manthan between these ideas of India, contrasting ideas of India, right? Uh, there was Ambedkar's idea of India, Sri Aurobindo's idea of India,
Hmm.
the rightist vision of India, Deen Dayal Upadhyay, and so on, Gandhian vision, Nehruvian vision of India,
Hmm.
right? And there are hardly any feminist readings that we have
Hmm.
on these things. So it was about mixing all these ideas of India, right? And then seeing what comes out.
Hmm.
And I am the vessel for the churning. The churning is not happening outside; it's happening within me, my own
Hmm.
experience. Uh, and the invitation for people on that journey is that you could do this yourself, or you could join me in my journey,
Hmm.
as I am understanding what's going on. Churn with me, right?
Hmm.
So that's where it was. At some stage I wanted to involve others, because I was having fabulous conversations, and I was like, wow, this conversation is worth a podcast. Like, this was a podcast, this wasn't a conversation. It was that good, it was that
Hmm.
much
Hmm.
fun, energetically so powerful. So I reached out to some people I regarded as being
Hmm.
ideologically closest to me, and being elders with serious experience in this field or
Hmm.
this domain, people who thought through these things for at least 3-4 decades,
Hmm.
right, and refined these ideas, and who would loosely be neither extreme right nor extreme left,
Hmm.
right, and to start dialoguing with them. So this podcast contains, I would say, some of the best thinkers of our times. And they're
Hmm.
not only thinkers, they're thinker doers. They're not only
Hmm.
thinking, but
Okay.
they're also in the field
People
of
who are
practice. Either they're
acting.
writing articles, they're running programs, workshops, or organizations,
Hmm.
advising companies. They're not just academicians.
Hmm. Hmm.
So they're multi-dimensional people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can quickly run through maybe some of them. Uh, Rajni Bakshi,
Hmm.
one of the people who's acknowledged in the start of the movie Swades,
Yeah. Yeah. I
for
know. I know.
Bapu Kuti, for her book Bapu Kuti.
Yeah. Yeah.
Phenomenal journalist, has been documenting things since emergency all the way to now. Beautiful
Hmm.
storyteller. She recounts the 5 great moments of Indian history. Brilliant
Hmm.
podcast. There's Raghu Anant Narayanan, founder of Ritambara.
Hmm.
Early encounter with Dharampal, and Dharampal inviting him to go deeper into the Indic, and
Hmm.
many decades of going deep into yoga and coming out with it. Phenomenal. Parth Shah, thinker, Center for Civil Society,
Hmm.
libertarian moving to uh, centrist ideas. Prasad Kaipa, prof, advising companies, being in Apple, looking at Indian and Indic wisdom. So some phenomenal people in
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
and many other thinkers. So I think yeah, these are people I resonate with and enjoy talking to.
Yeah. So you have like a whole buffet spread out in front of you. So it's not just academic people who are all the intellectuals who just writing stuff, but it's also people who have been in the field for I don't know for how many decades. They've been doing this work for a long time. They've had their own journey into it, and then when they share, then it comes from a different space altogether. It's not just intellectual sharing, but it's also a very grounded reality to it, which is the good thing about it, because that's what you want Centerfield also to be grounded in the Indianness of it.
And
And
Indian culture is a lot about experience, Anubhav.
hmm,
So our conclusions have to be based on lived experiences.
hmm, hmm.
So yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge that.
Yeah, it definitely is. So, what I wanted to ask you a little more was that, so you started out with Bharat Manthan, and then it started out as a rediscovery of India, and then you wanted to go around. I remember the plan that you shared is a very ambitious plan. You wanted to do a lot of work, but then logistics didn't really support us, and lockdowns at multiple levels of that. Then they played spoil sport. But what I wanted to understand was, where has your own personal journey into this idea of centrism comes from? Because if you look at your own journey, then you've had experiences from across different fields. You've also been on the right with, say, the Sangh Parivar, or you've also been to the libertarian system. You've also had the extreme left as well. So then, where did centrism come into the picture?
So I think I have a, I think there is a birth orientation of centrism. I think I'm centrist by birth, by my own experience, because I think there are three views you get on the thing. When you're at a distance, when you're close, and when you're inside it. Right. So somebody who's at a distance, say from the RSS, would say, "Oh my God, what a communal organization, and divisive, horrible, and whatever else." Maybe when you go a step closer, you realize, oh my God, they're not this one monolith, right? They're a diverse set of people coming together, and they're onto something, and there are several voices. So let's understand this deeper. Very different perspective. And when you go inside it, you experience an entirely different world. So on any issue, whether it's Kashmir or whether it's reservation, or you have these three different perspectives, right? And I had an early start. So I had the time to explore different perspectives from distance, close, and inside. Distance, close, inside, right? And as one does that, one starts seeing that truth is multidimensional. There's no one truth. Multidimensional truth. And if you look at what our emblem has something written on it, do you know what does our emblem?
Satyamev Jayate.
Satyamev Jayate. तो अगर सत्य की जय होनी है, and the Satya is a multi-dimensional entity, then one has to engage with it in all its dimensions. You can't, one truth can't win. Right? Because there is no one truth, there is multiple truths, and there are higher truths. And so to me, Satyamev Jayate, which is our founding edifice, necessarily requires you to engage with multi-dimensional truth. Right? And when you engage with multi-dimensional truth, you realize that the nature of truth is not as easy as the way people say it is. In fact, the nature of truth is kind of, it's paradoxical. It's not a very simple kind of a nature. In fact, I thought I'll pull out one symbol which for me is very central to this idea. Right? This is a Chinese symbol. You know which one I'm talking about, right?
Okay, I know, but let me just validate myself by actually looking at it. Is it the yin and the yang?
Yes, it is yin yang. So
okay, yeah, it is.
And it'd be good to see yin yang just for a moment to understand what really this is about, right? So let me just shut the other tabs because I'm going to distract people. And it's a very powerful image. It's not an Indian image in that way, not an Indic image, but it really is that white contains a little bit of black, black contains a little bit of white. It's not black and white. I mean, it is black and white, and it is not black and white.
Like it's a little tough to wrap your head around something like this.
Yeah, in fact, the greater complexity for the nerds in our sort of who are listening, I would say is that the black dot there is ideally actually not just a black dot, but another yin yang. And the white dot is also another yin yang because it's a fractal nature. Truths are intertwined. And I'm not going to go into that highly but this is how I've experienced truth. And it's multi-layered, intertwined, and nothing is purely black or white. Each one has a seed of the other. And to truly see reality, you have to see all these dimensions, And I would say also being centrist. So I would say, suppose this is the whole field, right? Now, where would the centrist be? Where is the centrist position here? And to me, centrist is this line, the line that is between the black and the white. Because being centrist sometimes would mean being totally on the black side, sometimes totally being on the white, somewhere being in between. The whole field is open. Where should you be, right? So to me, this is the center field, right? That line which is between the two, it keeps shifting, right, as the shape gets traced out. So this middle line, yeah. So yeah, so I think I wanted to just pull that one out, because I would say that having been all across, I discovered that I can't decisively say something is right or wrong forever. I can say something in the context of it. So to me, if I have to be truly authentic to who I am, I have to be a centrist. I can't be an ideological, fossilized ideological person. Be a centrist, right? I would say Bruce Lee was a centrist.
Okay, this is a very interesting example you've taken. Bruce Lee was a centrist. This is something that I've never heard before. Please share this.
Bruce Lee is a centrist.
I'll tell you the reason why. Because Bruce Lee was, Bruce Lee, for all his, for all his wisdom, he was never looked at as a philosopher as much as he was looked at as a martial artist.
But he's a deep philosopher. To be the best at anything, you have to be a good philosopher. Then you can be the best, whatever. So philosophy is like compulsory. So Bruce Lee learned and mastered a lot of martial arts, right? And he was awesome. And that was kind of phase one, Bruce Lee phase one. Okay. And that's like anybody who's phase one, they get indoctrinated into an ideology, and they become really good at it.
Yeah.
And they learn to use it on others. So Bruce Lee could use his martial arts on others. Most people stop at phase one. Then there's a phase two. Phase two is where Bruce Lee said, I will invent my own martial arts, the most ideal martial arts.
Okay.
Right? And he tries to invent something called Jeet Kune Do, or the art of the intercepting fist, I think was his invention. And that's kind of phase two. Phase two is where thinkers start building their own ideologies, and they say, in search of a perfect ideology, that this will be the ideology. And I had a phase where I was like, there must be this perfect ideology, Sarvanumati, or something that's like a perfect thing that will redeem us. And the interesting thing is that every ideology on phase one was started by somebody who reached phase two and said, I will find the ideal ideology. It reduces to become yet another divisive ideology.
It's like a loop, right? Like you start phase two, that then becomes the phase one of somebody.
Yeah, you start with great intentions, but you end up being just another ideology, which divides and so on. Now, Bruce Lee had an injury, and back-breaking injury, 6 months and so on. And during this injury, he read and reflected. And he reflected to realize that his attempt was futile because he was creating just another martial arts form. So to be truly a martial artist, you cannot lock yourself into an ideology, into a method. Because even while you're locked into a method, you'll just respond basis the method. So what Bruce Lee is trying to say is that if you truly want to be a martial artist, you have to be in that moment and ready to respond in whichever way required. Right? And you have to only see his Enter the Dragon final fight. Where he plays such unorthodox martial arts that the opponent doesn't know what's going on. Because he is not acting from a martial arts school of thought. He is responding to the opponent. He's right there with the opponent, right? And that's a centrist position because you're not responding to something from an ideology that somebody else had thought about hundreds of years ago, or you had thought about when you were a child and fossilized. You are responding to the question in the moment. Right? So centrist is not the average of left and right. It is a contextual response. At some stages, it can look like an extreme right response. At some stages, it can look like an extreme left response. It's truly centrist because it's examined, it's in the moment, it's coming from dialogue and truth in the moment, right? And it's an alive position. I would say left and right can be dead positions or at most evolving positions. Center is a forever alive position.
Like a pendulum, you keep
it's not necessarily, I would not say it's a pendulum. It's really a spot that can move anywhere as required in the space. It's almost like left and right are a two-dimensional space. I'm saying center as a third dimension itself.
Okay.
It's a different dimension of conversation, right? It's either finding the common ground or synthesizing the two opposite truths into one. So it's like the third door. When you're stuck between two doors, what's the door that includes the two or is an entirely new door? So I know we're talking very abstract. We can maybe speak in focus, and therefore it's an ongoing discovery. I don't know what is centrism. It's a path. It's a path really to discover to be in constant inquiry, constant dialogue. And I
Hmm.
feel our culture is built on that. That's been the founding principle of our culture.
Principles of.
Yeah, yeah.
So while sharing, you also mentioned that centrism, unlike say the Western notion, I'm maybe reducing it a little too much, but this is what I'm roughly trying to say, that when you talk about centrism, the Western notion has usually been the average between this side and this side. So if it is 5 and 20, then the average is 25, which is 12 and a half. So that's where the center is. But then the Indian notion of centrism is not that. So it's a lot more complex, it's a lot more nuanced. Why particularly Indic centrism? I mean, what has been your key factor to explore Indic centrism, apart from the fact that you are an Indian, you need this for the Indian context?
Yeah, so I think first I'll say what is centrism, what Western centrism or what is traditional centrism, average of left and right, sitting in between, bin pehne ka lota, dhubi ka kutta na ghar ka na ghat ka, switching sides, paltu, dal badlu, they're all like centrist, opportunist, jahan dikhega, jahan power hoga, wahan bhagega. This is all sort of what's been called centrist. And I'm saying, no, let's redefine it, let's reclaim it. And reclaim it how, right? So left and right is also a binary ultimately, right? Centrist, non-centrist can also end up becoming a binary. Bhai, tu centrist nahi hai, main centrist hu. You're still stuck in a sort of a binary, right? So I embrace Indic because we stand on a very, very sacred and ancient culture. And it would be very foolish for us to cut through our roots and embrace modernity and try to pretend everything is new modern when we're standing on such great heritage. So Indic one, to embrace our heritage, which we should be very proud of and which is very rich. It is also to embrace the wounds that we have faced. Right? There is a lot of pain in the psychic body of India. There's pain, there is anger, there's shame, there's a lot that we carry as baggage because of whatever has happened in the past, right? Particularly in the last 1,000 years with the invasions and the colonization. Dard hai, can't pretend it's not there. It's in our collective psyche. So also acknowledgement of that. And having acknowledged that, it's not a space for retribution. It's not a space for badla. It's not a space for othering. It's not a space to saying you are a lesser human being. You don't have a right to life, dignity, and so on. So that's where there's a departure, I would say, from some other ideological positions founded on a culture. So it acknowledges it, but from there it moves back to the constitution. It moves back to saying, yes, but this is how we will sort this out, right? So it has elements from each of these kind of things. So Indic, because it's dharmic, and by dharmic I would say what enlivens you, me, and the context, right? What brings us alive. So what is a dharmic way? What's a dharmic response to these times? And a lot on the left are allergic to dharmic and Indic. Like, no, man, it could be, this is where we're coming from. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna be light about it. Let's embrace where we're coming from and our roots. And we come from very healthy cultural roots which are based on dialogue, which are based on pluralism. Our culture has had a lot of time. And in that time, there has been space for diversity. Because you to understand this relationship, that when you're in a hurry, there is no diversity. In an army, you can't have diversity. You need homogeneity because you need to attack the enemy right now.
Yeah.
But when you're chilling out with your friends, maybe, passing around a chillam, each one's saying their own thing, and there's a spirit of oneness and shared collectiveness and all. And there's something about the oneness and the diversity coexisting. And that requires time, and that requires abundance, because we can't be diverse if we are fighting about things, right? Our culture has had a lot of time to chill, to look at the stars, to make great art, to have philosophy, to make Khajuraho and Kama Sutra, and to do the Ayurveda, and to do the Iron Pillar, and to have Aryabhat. And it needs time and it needs space. Coming from there, I think we've realized that truth has to be negotiated. Truth is not given. We need to be in constant dialogue with each other. And to me, the Indic way, therefore, is center as an ongoing commitment to dialogue and a non-violent commitment to dialogue, because otherwise I'll use violence, right? So what's the need for dialogue? I'll just take you. So dialogue that comes from non-violence, dialogue that comes from a respect for the other, dialogue that comes from a deep sense of equity, right? And dignity, right? So to that extent, yes, a deep dialogue on an ongoing basis is one of the bases of centrism. So I'm a centrist at heart. I'm a centrist in my relationship, in my life. I'm a centrist in my political leanings.
Hey, it must be a pretty tough job to actually explain centrism to everyone around you, right? I mean, when somebody like, it's now become a fashion to go around asking people, what is your thought on this and what is your ideology? Like, people on Tinder have this bio that if you're a right winger, then swipe left.
Yes.
No right wingers allowed. If you're a left winger, then don't do this. So the thing is, it's become very fashionable to talk about your ideologies. So left and right, though, first of all, left and right are not an Indian ideology to begin with. Like, I remember Raghu once mentioning that they're all Western, and it's a very French colonial era concept, but we use it for sake of convenience. So left and right, though, we can still explain. But when you talk about centrism, it's like a very difficult thing to explain to people, right? Because not everyone is going to get the nuance of this in one go. It's been so many podcasts that you've recorded. It's been so many conversations with you that I've been able to internalize and understand what is centrism. So randomly, if somebody comes up and if they talk to you and then they ask you, kya hai aapka ideology, and you tell them I'm a centrist, then it's going to be a really tough job for them. So how do you then, what's an easier way for people to wrap their head around something like this?
Yeah, I would say, Arvind, I've realized that centrism is best not explained, but better experienced. I went on to the quest of articulating centrism because I experienced the center. I experienced the center, for example, we were at World Youth Congress in Turkey, and this was 2009. In the daytime, we were fighting with the Pakistanis. In our regional breakout, we were fighting with the Pakistanis, and it was all tense and all. At night at the party, all of us were dancing together, man. And I suddenly realized, wow, we're just one world. All these countries, we're just human beings. We were just this group of 1,500 human beings dancing together from 90 odd countries. And I was like, whoa, this is what this is about. We're like one global family. That was a moment of centrism for me, that we are way more than our countries and our identities. And I think centrism is an experience we all have access to. Wo Harivansh Rai Bachchan says, Mandir, Masjid, Bhed Karate, Sang Lati Madhushala. Like, people may be fighting over Mandir and Masjid, send them to the bar, they'll get
and
drunk,
alcohol,
they'll get all senti and hugging each other and like, oh my God, bro. So we have more in common than we have differences. We forget that. And we forget that the act of being a human being is a very difficult thing. Life is tough for each of us. Each of us sleeps at night, eats a few meals, poops, cares for their kids and their partner. We're all very similar. We're not so different. And each time you find that humanness with someone, you are experiencing the center. Each time you're with your lover, for example, and time loses track, and you're like, wow, we're just one. There's oneness, ekatva. You're at the center. So centrism is an experience. It's not a ideological explanation, right? And once you have experienced the center, once you've tasted that center, right, you hold your own ideology a little more loosely. I don't want to convert even one person to centrism, zero centrists. I want people to have experienced the center, because once they have experienced the center, they go back to their ideology, they'll hold it more lightly. They'll see the flaws of their own ideology as they appreciate it. Right? They'll be more human about it. They'll be more forgiving to the other. They'll be more loving. Right? I don't want even a single centrist, but I want everybody to experience the center. And I would say that our culture has experienced the center and passed it across generations. So when you say Ek Omkar Satnam, it has a line, Adi Sat, Jugadi Sat, Hai Bhi Sat. It was true then, it was true now, it will always be true. A Hindu may say this is Sanatan Dharma, right? And they may find that spirit there. So it's a spirit that's coming from thousands of years. It's coming through Kabir. It's coming through Rumi. It's not even an Indian flavor. It's a humanity level flavor, right? And how does one experience that flavor? And there are people who experienced it and they've tried to put it in poetry. They've tried to put it. Words don't do justice to it. It will have to be poetry, metaphors, stories. It can't be, So I've realized that Bruce Lee did it through martial arts. Rumi and Kabir did it through dohas, poems and dohas. And Buddha did it through vipassana or other ways. We have to find our own way, and words are not that way, unfortunately. That's why I'm pausing this podcast series for now and releasing 13 episodes and saying, hang on, this is not the way, right? It was intellectually stimulating, but we probably need some other ways.
So like you mentioned, it's not like it's easy to explain the concepts of gravity, but it's only when you jump that it is how it exists.
Yes.
Like, it's a very bad example to give, but you have to be in the action to understand things. You have to be there at that moment. Like, you can describe a cricket match to people all you want, but as long as you don't play it yourselves, you're not going to experience the thrill of that. So that it is,
And there are some references to it. I feel like they're all fingers pointing to the moon. The real moon is the experience of the center. We can all be fingers pointing to the experience of the center. My email signature is Rumi's quote, no? Beyond wrongdoing and right doing,
there is
beyond our ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there.
So
I'm like, this guy in a different country, 700-800 years ago or 600 years ago, experienced this and wrote this in Persian, I think. And it's imperfect translation, because somebody on Clubhouse pointed out, like, bro, your translation is wrong. This is Mr. Collins' translation. I'm like, oh my God, you're just missing the point of the quote, because exactly the point of the quote is right or wrong ke pare jate hain. Kuch uske aage dikhte hain.
He just proved your point in the moment.
He proved my point.
In experience, he proved your point.
He proved why my quote was so apt. So I'm saying there are references and pointers to the center. And there is a lot of spiritual people who experience the center as personally. They get awakening experiences, they feel oneness and all. But centrism, not only as a personal experience, but as a political ideology.
Okay.
And only people who have experienced the center personally coming together will be able to create a political center. You cannot create a political center if you're angry, if you're polarized from within, if you're bitter, if you're unwilling to dialogue, if you want to use force. Such people will make centrist yet another ideology that's constantly fighting with left and right. So we don't need one more ideology. We've got too many. We've got variants and variants. People who experience the center in some way, and all of us have, but those of us who experience it more deeply, if we come together and say that the personal is political and the political is personal, right? We're not going to be spiritual materialists sitting on an island. We're not going to be bitter activists who are just fighting. We're going to be deeply anchored people. Going to be the Sajjan Shakti coming together, bringing all the goodness together. What would that look like, right? So to me, the center is a collection of people who experience the center internally, and therefore they dialogue externally. They see the nuances of the truth. They take their positions independent of who's in power or independent of which ideology they're coming from, to dialogue and say what is right, not who is right. What is right at this moment, not what was right then. Right. So centrist is also a very shapeshifter. You can say, boss, you were saying this 3 days ago, you change your mind. You're like, it's a good thing. If you don't change your mind, you're not using it, right? So it's a good thing to change your mind. Centrists change their mind because new information comes up, and who knows, man. So I guess I've gone a lot on it, but I hope I've answered your question that it's an experience. We have to create experiences like that alcohol ad. I think it was a Carlsberg or Heineken ad, where they got people across ideologies to do tasks and drink and then discover it. It's quite a nice ad.
I've seen that.
It's a fun ad, and let's see if I can pull that out. So so I think it's something like that.
I think as a centrist, you should never get on Twitter and tweet things, because if you change it after 3 days, somebody will share your screenshot saying, "Hey, तुमने तो 4 दिन पहले ये बोला था. How are you saying this right now?" It's like a huge pain to be on Twitter and then change your opinions.
Right.
Which unfortunately is the whole crux of centrism.
Right. That's true. So the ad is called Worlds Apart. It's a Hanukkah ad, and we could have done a watch party, but we don't have the time right now. But maybe I'll do a reaction video to it, and we'll talk about it as a reaction video, since reaction
Yeah,
videos are all rage now.
yeah, we should definitely do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I mean, you briefly mentioned that you had spoken with 13, or you've spoken with a lot of people. You've spoken with, say, Parth from Center for Civil Society, Raghu and Rajni and all of these people. So what I wanted to understand was, I mean, what's been your journey speaking with each one of them? How has it been? How did you like think of these people? Like, if you can share a bit on that.
Like I said, these were the people who were nearest to me and most
Mm-hmm.
resonating with me. And my journey with them in doing the podcast was a lot of joy and fun and a lot of energy. So while we were talking, we felt we were onto something. We were feeling very congruent, very excited. Each person said, "This is a worthwhile endeavor. It's much needed. You have to do it." And I guess I was the biggest beneficiary. Like, if nobody, not even one person watches this podcast or the others, I think I do it for myself. I think and this is again an Indic way, right? It's karma yoga. I did it as a karma yogi. I did it because I felt it was the right thing to do, without really bothering about the fruits. And it doesn't mean that I should not bother about the fruits. So now I'm trying to package it and release it and all. At net, the action itself is valuable and joyful. So that was what it was.
Yeah, I mean, you're using a lot of words that the Indian right uses quite frequently. Let's hope people don't think you're a right winger or you're anti left winger. This whole fear around that. So yeah, I think we've used the word centrism enough for people to know that you are a centrist at heart and in action as well.
Yeah, but I love both the right leaning and the left leaning people. I think they're all well intentioned. They want to see a beautiful country.
Yeah,
They differ on the how, but at the end of it, we all want to see a country that is amazing, prosperous, thriving for our future generations. We don't realize that we want the same thing. And I don't know why people who want the same thing are fighting so much. At the heart of it, I know I'm grossly simplifying it. The how is really a big deal. I think if we could just acknowledge कि भाई तू कट्टर क्यों है क्योंकि you also want the well-being of your people. I want the well-being of my people. Your people may differ people to people, but end of the day, yeah, I think how do we tap into that humanity and compassion?
there's this image that comes to my mind every time I think about these ideological differences. Like, it's like there's a big circle and there's just a small gap in the circle. So one person is standing here, the other person is standing here, and then they're trying to meet each other. But they just turn their backs, they'll say, "Ye to aamne samne khada hai." So if you actually look at it, then the basis of what they are trying to do is that they want a better country. And they're all fighting between amongst themselves and say, "Are, how can you do this? How can you do this?" There's this whole fight that goes around it. But at the heart of it, you all want a better life, you all want a better country, and so on and so forth. So if you just look back, then you realize that he's just here. He's also trying to do the same thing that I'm trying to do. So it's definitely a lot more collaborative. You mentioned it is simplifying it a bit too much, but I think it is very simple. It's not complicated. It is quite simple.
Yeah.
It's just we've not been able to internalize the fact that the other person is not my enemy.
Yeah, we're all on the same team, man. We're on Team India.
Yeah.
And Team
Yeah, exactly.
Right. No, and I mean, since we're talking about simplification, I couldn't resist this simplification also that every society needs a tension between two forces. One force that wants to preserve what is working, and another force that wants to update what is not working. To me, the right is the force that wants to preserve what is working. And a lot is working already, and we should be grateful for it. But you can't say everything is working. You can't say the caste system is working. You can't say patriarchy is working. They need upgradation. And the left, in its questioning and in its liberalness, is upgrading the society. The fear of the right is that, oh my God, if it gets entirely upgraded, we lose what has worked for us. The fear of the left is if we don't upgrade anything, our society will be stuck into old traditions. And a good society is a healthy tension between these two, because there's never a fixed answer. What is needed right now? Do we need to hold on to what is working, or do we need to experiment and innovate? Do we need to experiment and innovate? I think that for me is of essence.
Yeah, I think you probably didn't tell the people that you're on a podcast right now. Should have told them that they wouldn't have called you.
Yeah, no, I should have put this on silent, but that is
Yeah,
that.
it's okay.
I think we'll just deal with it for now. And
I think we've had a
we'll
lot
have to
more.
cut this part.
We've had much worse Zoom snafus. So I think a phone call is the least of all.
True.
Yeah, I think
true.
we can.
And as true centrists, we'll continue and move on.
Yeah. So I think finally, let's move to the wrap on. And finally, what I wanted to understand was, while speaking, you were mentioning that each ideology goes through different phases. Phase one is where you get indoctrinated into an ideology. Phase two is where you start discovering something of your own. So a lot of what we call as ideology today, the left, right, center, and a lot of these things were ideologies that somebody had discovered in phase two, for example. So you also said that you are in the phase two of your own journey. You're now discovering something, and you're working on, or rather, rediscovering the centrist ideology, working on that. But do you have this fear that the phase two of centrism will then become the phase one of somebody, and it will then be used to indoctrinate people, and then नहीं नहीं तुम नहीं हो centrist, so then you are what is wrong with the country. It's very easy to fall down that slope, because that's anyway happening with left and right and religions and all of these things.
The point is, any ism is bound to fall down onto that slope, and center is also an ism, right? We made an ism out of it. Just you coin an ism, it's a downward track. As soon as you give it a name, you're differentiating it. So it's inevitable, I think, right? But there will be a phase when it's alive before it fossilizes. And there's a place where it will be timely, relevant, and contextual. And while it's timely, relevant, and contextual, I hope to preserve the essence of it. And I think building a movement around it, building a movement that has a vision, a 50-year vision for the world, a 20-year, 25-year vision for India, and is willing to coordinate actions in that direction. And and if it becomes an ism, I think it should destroy, it should die. And something else which is more relevant should replace it.
Yeah, but I think at the heart of it, the essence of, say, the centrist philosophy is you keep dialoguing, you keep
it's Sanatan.
in the movement.
It is Sanatan in a deep way. It's an ongoing thing. We're really reclaiming something very deep that our civilization understands.
Yeah, exactly.
So
in a way, understanding more about the centrist ideology is a way of decolonizing yourself, because you're now getting out of a lot of already fed ideas. See, this is right, this is wrong. So you're now like, no, boss, let me figure it out for myself. Let me figure out what is good for my country. You don't need to give me a set parameter.
Absolutely. Beautifully put. In fact, I have to say this also, that I think when we got independent, we were starting to get inspired by Russia. And the first few decades was a Russian vision for India. Post-liberalization, we had an American vision for India, because, free markets, capitalism. And more recently, I feel our vision is coming closer to a Chinese vision for the world: build infrastructure, centralize, and so on. But boss, what is the Indian vision for India? When will we truly be inspired by ourselves and say, this is who we are? This is what works for us. And to me, I think I found a couple of things which I'm quickly going to summarize, because not everybody may watch the podcast series. So I'm going to make it easy for them. I think what an Indian vision for India would be a lot of paradoxes, because truth is paradoxical. Indians love paradoxes and we are comfortable with them. One paradox could be frugal abundance, which means there's a lot in the world, there's abundance, and still we require to have a material simplicity, a self-control, a frugality of our own, whatever is comfortable to us. So the aim of life is spiritual, it's not material. But material helps the spiritual, right? If you're in it, and all of us are not same. So if you are a business class, maybe your relationship with material wealth will be different. But business is a pathway to spiritual enlightenment. If you're Kabir, maybe you're just a weaver. If you're Nisarg Dutt Maharaj, you're making beedis. Whatever you're doing, spirituality is equally accessible to all. right? And so to me, that's kind of one of its pillars, right? Cyclicity is another pillar. Things are cyclical. There'll be balance, relationship with time, respect for nature, pluralism, non-violence. So the whole set of principles that these podcasts are uncovering, and it would be fun if somebody bothers to listen to them.
Yeah. I think we really hope people do, because like we mentioned in the beginning, Abhishek has done a lot of work. We've spoken to a lot of people. There have also been a lot of people who've put in their time to this. They're not doing it because matlab, theek hai, kar lenge. They're doing it because they see some merit to what is happening right now. And this is all wisdom of really smart people, to put it. So do check this out and do hear this podcast whenever you get a chance to. On that note, what is the future for the Centerfield? Now that you mentioned you're going to stop it with 13 podcasts. So if somebody wants to be associated, wants to be on this journey with you, or wants to do something, so what are the ways they can?
Well, the immediate future for me is to return the phone call that's been coming on my non-silent
what
phone.
Can be done?
Yeah, so I'm saying my immediate one is to return the phone call, but I think just to keep track of my Facebook profile, to keep track of my Twitter handles, keep track of just follow me. I think I would say, and stuff will keep coming up.
Okay, so on that note, let us officially close it. So thank you, Abhishek. Thank you. It's been a wonderful chat with you. A lot of interesting stuff that have come up.
Thanks a lot.
Hope to see more of this.
Yes.
And looking forward to the channel being launched very soon. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.